it's much more than just golf. Myself and the superintendents at Big Cedar, we're tasked with being caretakers of some pretty special properties and with our core values being conservation. So we continue to look for ways to make the golf courses more sustainable, reduce our footprint, and provide a welcoming habitat for wildlife, as well as a place for guests to keep coming back year after year.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Fiella, and welcome to another episode of the Golf Sustainability Podcast. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Bubba Wright, Director of Agronomy at Big Cedar Lodge, for what I know is going to be a very interesting conversation based on his diverse experience in the industry. Bubba, welcome to the Golf Sustainability Podcast.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. I've heard a lot about your podcast, so appreciate the opportunity to join you.
Thanks. Well, I hope everything you've heard is good, Bubba.
Yeah. And after this one, too.
Yes, I'm sure it will be. Believe me, you're going to help me, that's for sure. Let's start by having you tell us a little about your career journey and your current role at Big Cedar Lodge.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing this since I was in high school, 17 years old. It's just an opportunity to put gas in the tank and really fell in love with golf and combine my love of nature and the outdoors and working in a team environment, seeing your work in front of you every day. So I was immediately hooked back in college. And for the past 13 years, I was with the Pebble Beach Company. And while I was there, I held every position from intern to superintendent at Pebble Beach Golf Links, and actually had 2 stints with the company. First as an intern in 2010 for the U.S. Open, and set me up to take my first assistant superintendent position at TPC Scottsdale. And after a couple of years in the desert, I was fortunate enough to be welcomed back into the fold at PBC and held the roles of assistant to superintendent. And after the 2023 U.S. Women's Open, I was approached about the opportunity to join Big Cedar Lodge as the Director of Agronomy over their 5 resort golf courses with a 6 one under construction. So very exciting. And, I like to say I traded waves for waterfalls coming out here to the Ozarks. And, it was just a great opportunity for me, and I couldn't pass it up, and really a chance to combine my personal passions with my passion for golf maintenance. So this is where I've been hanging my hat for the past 7 months, and it's been a very diverse and rewarding road for me so far, and brought me to this point.
Wow, that's awesome. So you were in an ocean course environment, to the desert, back to the ocean, and now up in the mountains.
So reverse grapes of wrath, if you will.
All right. Well, listen, that's having had responsibility managing courses in all 3 of those environments. Tell us about what that's been like and kind of what the biggest differences are from a course management and sustainability standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that comes to mind is, I think, pretty obvious, and that's your climate. The golf courses, the environment has all been pretty similar when you look at, public high-end resort facilities, tournament courses for the most part, very similar. But when you dive into the uniqueness of the facilities, it gets down to weather, turf types, diverse talent pools that you're pulling from when it comes to staffing. But the priorities of the organizations have all been very similar in terms of world-class service to our guests and providing a very welcoming environment to our associates. So, water needs is certainly at the high end of looking at desert to West Coast to Missouri. So
yeah, well, certainly in Arizona and in the desert, the issues around water are pretty extreme. At the I had a chance to attend the Golf Course Superintendents Association show, which was in Phoenix this year, and as part of the study tour, there was a lot of talk about the unique issues related to water in the desert, and having had a chance as an intern to work on a U.S. Open, man, that had to be a pretty awe-inspiring entry into the business.
There's no doubt that really set the table for me. And, I was fortunate to work for some great people, and I was going to Rutgers, and a former student at Rutgers was the current assistant at Pebble Beach, so Billy Hausch. And so I had a little bit of an in there, and that really opened a lot of doors for me. So it's a great experience.
Yeah. Well, good for you. What a resume. I feel especially honored to have you on the show here today, Bubba.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people to thank to get me to this point. So I wish I could take all the credit.
Hey, in the big scheme of things, Big Cedar Lodge, it's a newer resort that, some might describe as a pretty well-kept secret, contrasted to Pebble Beach, of course, which is kind of in everyone's memory bank when it comes to golf. Tell us a little about the history of Big Cedar Lodge.
Yeah, absolutely. And Pebble Beach and the Pinehursts of the world, they've had a long time to really build their reputation, and we're new, especially when you look at the golf side. So, but I think the secret is starting to get out. And the story of Big Cedar Lodge really begins in 1987. That's when John Morris, who founded Bass Pro Shops, as we all know, purchased a small parcel of lakeside property, and he created actually a fishing camp getaway for his outfitters. And now looking at us 37 years later, that initial vision has evolved into Big Cedar Lodge and Big Cedar Resort. So we're trained to provide genuine Ozark hospitality and in a rustic, elegant setting. And we sit on about 4,600 acres here across the Missouri portion of the Ozark Mountains. And we're right up along the Arkansas border, as well as Table Rock Lake. So it's pretty majestic setting. And, Mr. Morris has quickly made a name for himself for the golf community. When you look at the construction of Top of the Rock, Ozarks National, Mountaintop, Buffalo Ridge, Paynes Valley, and the majority of that has really been in the last 5 years. So, like we talked about earlier, if you look at the golf resort scene in the United States, from coast to coast, you got Pebble Beach and Pinehurst and Bandon Dunes, and we're really trying to replicate that here in the Midwest, but with our own spin to it. We have we're trying to get, and I really believe we are, the same standards on our service levels, our course conditioning, but also provide a really deep connection with nature for all of our guests. So it's a very special place, and really excited to see where Mr. Morris is going to take it in the future, because as much as we've grown in the last 5 years, there's really no slowdown on the horizon. So.
Yeah. Well, having spent some time on the website and doing some reading on Big Cedar Lodge prior to the conversation here today, Bubba, it's obviously conservation is really important to the founder, and it seems to be a core element of the DNA of Big Cedar Lodge. Tell us about your philosophy around conservation, and maybe how that leads into sustainability.
Yeah, absolutely. And, working for Bass Pro and Mr. Morris, he is certainly the driving force, between all of our conservation efforts. And it is absolutely at the core of his business and his life, and ensuring that we're doing our part to protect wildlife and wild places, future generations to enjoy. So it's really certainly a part of our DNA. And if you look at what we're doing, not just on the golf side, but on the resort side too, I have to give them credit. They've, in any given year, throwing some stats out here, they'll recycle 2 tons of plastic, 250 tons of cardboard, 14 tons of glass. And around the resort, you'll see habitats for wild game, flora, fauna, fish, and wildlife. So, and a lot of educational materials for people as well. So, and he also has areas where he's preserving American history in his museum. So it's an incredibly dynamic place that, takes a lot of pride in the environment that we're in, the level of hospitality that we provide, and the opportunities that Big Cedar Bass Pro have provided us. So it's certainly at the core of everything we do, and we go out and onto our properties, maintaining the facilities.
Well, it sounds like if you make a visit out to Big Cedar Lodge and you love the outdoors, you could be busy for weeks.
Yeah. I mean, there really is, this is the Mecca for the outdoors, and combining kind of a Disneyland with golf is stay here for a week. So
nice. Well, look, there's clearly a lot going on at Big Cedar Lodge, but let's zero in on golf course operations, which obviously you're responsible for. Tell us about what sustainability means for you at Big Cedar Lodge's golf courses.
Absolutely. And I'm going to steal a quote from Mr. Morris I learned shortly after being hired, and that is, that we all live downstream. So everything comes your way eventually, and all your actions, there's certainly a reaction. And what that means for us is providing the same opportunities and hopefully leaving your environment a better place than you found it for future generations. So it's much more than just golf. Myself and the superintendents at Big Cedar, we're tasked with being caretakers of some pretty special properties and with our core values being conservation. So we continue to look for ways to make the golf courses more sustainable, reduce our footprint, and provide a welcoming habitat for wildlife, as well as a place for guests to keep coming back year after year. So,
yeah. Well, we all live downstream.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's short.
It's four words that really have a kind of profound perspective, right? Because we've got to make sure that we sustain things for future generations, and we can't afford to mess it up. Are there any particular initiatives or projects around kind of water use, pesticide use? I know you mentioned some of the great things going on related to waste management and recycling. Are there any specific elements of what you're doing around sustainability at the courses that you'd like to talk about?
Absolutely. And, if you look at just the whole place, the program is just very holistic, tries to be all encompassing. Nothing is incredibly groundbreaking, but we're trying to move the needle in all areas. If it's your fertilizer applications, understanding what you're putting out and how that correlates to your soil test, using organic fertilizers whenever possible. That's an initiative that we've had with the Audubon Society for as long as the properties have been open. Really having a tight water system, knowing where your water's going. All of our systems, we're very fortunate, are brand new. We're actually replacing one Buffalo Ridge that was 25 years old. So fortunate enough to have support from ownership in that area to give us the tools we need to perform at a very high level. But it looks, as a whole about our sustainability efforts. Here it's just taken to a really new level because it's such a unique conservation theme with Big Cedar that you're just not seeing at other golf courses because it is at the forefront. And you go around our properties and Top of the Rock, it was a botanical garden with a golf course cut out through it. It's a very special place. And we have multiple bison herds at Buffalo Ridge. We have bass habitat at Paynes Valley, Ozarks National. We have pheasant fields that we plant and we maintain and monitor that population. So hopefully it's helping with those efforts for years to come.
Yeah. So it sounds like at more than at most courses, the whole connection to wildlife and the kind of maintenance, the kind of the care and protection of wildlife is a big part of what you do there at the courses at Big Cedar Lodge.
Yeah, 100%. And every little property is unique, like I said, and you see something different. They're able to kind of protect different species and wildlife to the best of our ability. So,
yeah. What are you most proud of, I guess, in your sustainability efforts? Is there anything that you've, and I know you're there for a relatively short period of time, so this may be asking you to call out a more historical perspective, but what are you folks most proud of there around your sustainability efforts?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Like I said, I am new, but personally for me, it really derives from all the people that I have worked for in the past and the organizations. When I look at the people that I've worked for, they've put a premium on conservation and sustainability, starting with GA Tour and, whether it's how charitable of an organization they are, their involvement with supporting the GCSAA, green efforts, all their outreach, Pella Beach Company, all the recycling efforts. We put in solar on top of our maintenance facilities, to reduce. We would recycle our grass clippings and put them back in mulch beds. So, and also the use of reclaimed water on the West Coast instead of, pumping it straight to the source. So it's really just about the people that I have worked for and how it has been at the forefront for them, and all the education we brought to golfers. So
yeah, what's as you look at things going forward, what would you consider some of the bigger sustainability challenges that you've either had to face or will need to tackle going forward at Big Cedar Lodge?
yeah. Well, I think it gets back to golf as a whole, and just making sure that we're doing a great job communicating to the powers that be of all the positive efforts that golf does provide. In our case, it's massive acreage, and the golf course can act as a filter for a lot of things, and really be a conduit for golfers to get out there and enjoy the properties. But in our particular case, with the growth of Big Cedar, whether it's on the golf course construction side or operations, it's really getting buy-in from all of our new staff. Is the biggest thing for us moving forward. Making sure everybody understands our goals and maintaining those goals, training the teams and the standards set forth by Audubon, but also by our ownership, which is incredibly high expectations. So, and every tree and animal is looked after with great care in our environment and around the golf courses. So, and working for Mr. Morris, he comments more on what's going around the property than the roll of the green. So sometimes that's got to be your highest priority. But
yeah, you've mentioned Audubon a couple of times. I'm somewhat familiar with their program. I've been out to visit with their director of golf programs, Frank Lavadera, who's a great guy. Tell us about what it is you're doing with Audubon and the relationship that you have with them.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been a huge resource for us as far as our efforts go, and I know that ownership is incredibly proud of all of our certifications on the golf courses, and it's great timing because they were actually out here earlier this week for our recertification visit, and we passed with flying colors, fortunately. So another 3 years in the books for us. But all of our golf courses are Audubon certified, and we're currently working on getting our 6th golf course Audubon certified, which is under construction. So, all I can say is they're just a fantastic resource and really a soundboard to get the tools you need to do the job as well. So.
Yeah, they've been around for a while. They're doing really important work. I know that they've expanded. They now have I think it's called a platinum program where you could actually get the resort component certified also. And I'm sure they've pitched you on that.
They're working on it over there right now. So we've met and. They've been picking our brains how we did it on the golf side, and the resort is we take those certifications for granted, but there's a lot of work that goes into it for sure.
Yeah, well, listen, I mean that really demonstrates your commitment to sustainability, right? Because it is extra work. It is, it's a commitment that you've got to execute against, and it's clear that you take that. You take it very seriously. From my experience in the world of corporate sustainability, I've kind of referred to sustainability as a team sport because it's impossible to really accomplish sustainability on your own, right? There are lots of partnerships and alliances that you need, be it from your partners, from industry associations. Audubon is clearly an important partnership that you have, but what are some of the other partnerships that you have at Big Cedar Lodge that are helping in your efforts to advance sustainability?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we are very fortunate to partner with some great organizations. Just given who we are and who our founder is, and whether it is Audubon. John Deere, Rainbird, the golf course suppliers, these institutions are able to provide us the tools to manage our resources and equipment as efficiently as possible. And when I look at John Deere and all the strides that they've made, whether it's utilizing GPS technology on your spray rig, diving into electric, their on-leak platform is fantastic for us. It gives you real-time data about your equipment, how it's running. Is it running efficiently out in the field? Is it idling? We can tell if a guy's out there sitting on the mower for maybe a little bit too long. So good, maybe good and bad for team morale, but helps us run more efficiently for sure. And then it gets to Rainbird, and they're really at the top of their game when it comes to water conservation, efficiency, all the tools that they have in their programming. Yeah, gives you a lot of confidence that water's going where it needs to go. And just those two organizations as a whole provide us with a ton of support, which is what it's all about, right? You want to have people that you can call and are going to be there to answer at a moment's notice to be able to support for you. And another one of our partners is Environmental Works, a local company, and they come out and they monitor all of our drains and outfalls and irrigation water resources. So they're looking for any foreign substances out there, and do that on a quarterly basis, and helps us maintain a healthy water supply. So you're right. It's certainly a team effort, and very fortunate to have a lot of support for sure.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with Environmental Works. Are they a consulting company?
Exactly. And they give us a lot of support, when it comes to getting certified with Audubon or recertified. And that's something that we've just taken, upon ourselves. And it's really a full scale test of every water source on the golf course, and as well as our irrigation source. So any drain and outfall, they're testing for any sort of chemicals that could be finding its way out of the system. But fortunately, everything's been watertight so far. So we're in very good shape.
Yeah. So, it's interesting, Bubba, you've been around for a while, right? And you've had leadership roles in a number of different courses. This whole topic of working with suppliers and working with partners, is it, how's that whole relationship changing? Are you having to go to suppliers to ask for things to accomplish your goals, or are they coming to you proactively with ideas? How have you seen the whole relationship between the golf course and key suppliers evolve on this whole subject of sustainability?
Yeah. Well, I think superintendents have, done a good job of explaining their needs. And when you get to a company like John Deere or Rainbird or Audubon, they're listening to what you have to say and looking for ways they can troubleshoot and make a more valuable product for the end user. So in our case, just really fortunate to have great partnerships, and those partnerships have been built at Big Cedar long before I was here. But fortunately, a lot of them I knew in my previous life. So you know how it is in your career. You know people for 10 or 15 years, and that relationship is just as valuable as the partnership, and mutually beneficial. So it's a dynamic environment, but they help push us along. So a lot of support.
Yeah. Interesting. I mentioned at the Golf Course Superintendents Association show earlier this year, they had this mini hole set up outside the convention center that was like the golf hole of the future, and they had these different technologies that they were demonstrating. They had a solar powered aeration device for a pond, and they had these really interesting sensors that I guess that would be embedded throughout the course. And they're claiming that rather than irrigation systems being set by time and day, that they're envisioning a future where these sensors will actually trigger kind of when and where irrigation systems trigger. And is that like a crazy outlandish idea, or do you see any technologies in the future that you think can help even further advance sustainability?
Yeah, it's scary to think how far technology has come. I mean, just in the last 10 to 15 years from the advent of smartphones, now look at how it's such a part of your everyday life, and your whole life is on phone. So it's definitely coming to golf, and you look at moisture sensors and how they could talk back to your irrigation computer. Do you pair that with drone technology, or is one day you're going to be flying a drone and your drone's going to tell you everything that needs to run and for the exact amount of time paired with the current weather from your weather station, and have a full understanding of 100 acres on your golf course? How will that affect playability as well as the resources you're putting out there? Because if right now you just don't have the time or the eyes to see every square inch of everything every single day. So you're relying on this computer to kind of do a blanket application, and that's where I really see it changing. Is how can you pinpoint your fertilizers or any sort of pesticides, irrigation, your staff. So if Elon can put a Tesla into outer space, I'm sure they're going to be able to figure out how to irrigate a golf course.
Yeah. Well, if not him, I'm sure someone's playing around with autonomous mowers.
Yeah, someone's smarter than me. You're right. And that's definitely in the immediate future. I feel like it's close. And you talk about John Deere and the Toros of the world. That's definitely a big topic, and it's going to be a game changer once they have that technology dialed in, for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. Those are two companies I'm definitely going to want a chance to talk to, because they're probably on the cutting edge of research around technologies that are being developed.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with both of them, and the amount that they spend on R&D is pretty impressive from what I understand. So it's coming.
Interesting. So your take is technology is really going to play an even more important part in golf course sustainability in the fairly near term.
I really believe so. That seems to be the industry that's developing the most. Just when you look around, whether you're on Twitter or Instagram or watching the news, it's so technology or AI driven and autonomous driven, and stuff seems to trickle to ag first, and we get it next, but it's certainly coming our way. So, and especially the next generation of kids. You look at these kids coming up. The kids in college, they are just all in with technology. So, but it'll be great. It'll be a resource for me for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that connection to ag, because it's something I didn't have an appreciation for. But one of the things I picked up at the GC SAA show was the fact that there are these ag companies seem to be getting more involved in golf, and they're taking tech developments around productivity for food and agriculture that are gravitating to the golf industry. So that'll be really interesting to see what happens going forward.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So, Bubba, this is, in the last part of my conversations with guests, I really like to try to get to know people on a personal level and give our listeners a chance to get to know my guests a little better. So kind of we move on from talking about golf and Big Cedar Lodge to talking about getting to know Bubba Wright. So I've got some questions about kind of your history and your background. And the first thing I'd like to ask you is what drives you? What is it that really moves you and motivates you?
Sure. Well, I'll try not to bore you talking about myself, but what really attracts me to the golf industry is every day brings a new set of challenges. I really believe that you never go out there to see the same issue twice, and it's very much a team sport. Being able to grow and develop a team to help them reach their goals continues to be a driving force for me, and has certainly been much more at the forefront in my current role. I want people to show up to work as enthusiastic and as excited about it as I am, because, I'm really, really passionate about this and care for the properties. And so it's important to project that energy on the team and make sure our culture and environment reflects that. So,
yeah, well, you're clearly very modest, and you're clearly all about the team. And I think that's probably one of the reasons you're a successful leader. Who has inspired you along the way?
Yeah. Immediately my granddad, he got me into golf and drug me out there even when I didn't want to. I think I'd rather be playing baseball, but I finally wised up and and found a passion for it. But since then, I draw a lot of my inspiration from the staff. This is not an easy job. They're out there doing physical manual labor and requires long hours in the heat. And it's met with some judgment about the product that you put out there on a daily basis. And you're never going to really reach perfection. And at times it can be a thankless job. So seeing the team come together, continue to develop and grow their leadership skills is certainly inspiring. And fortunately, I've been able to work for some pretty fantastic superintendents throughout my career. And if you look at TBC Scottsdale, I was with Brandon Reese and Jeff Plotz and the Pebble Beach Company, Jeff Steen, Chris Dahlheimer, Jack Holt, and I could put those guys in a room with anybody in this industry, and I feel like they'd be able to hold their weight. So being able to spend my formative years around those people and be a sponge, soaking up all the information that I could, and hopefully taking their positive management traits and putting it into my management style. It really continues to be a driving force. And, there's so many turf professionals that can draw lineage from those people. And hopefully someday there'll be a few that can draw one to me. So, definitely.
Yeah. Well, listen, you were smart enough to be a sponge and to be open to that stuff. There are lots of people who are around experienced, wise folks, and they're not necessarily as open to the opportunities to learn. And
Sure.
And it sounds like you've embraced those opportunities. And in hearing you continually to refer to your team, it certainly sounds like you've not only worked for some good people, but it sounds like you'd probably be a pretty good person to work for.
I don't know what they say behind my back, but it's what they say in my face. So I'll take it.
All right. Hey, what's been the greatest challenge that you have faced?
Probably breaking 80. I don't have much of a golf game anymore, but I've always been a bit of a risk taker when it comes to, my personal life and trying to get out of my comfort zone. And you could tell I've lived in some different places of the world and worked in some pretty demanding positions. But I think the biggest challenge I faced was right at the onset of COVID. Chris Dahlheimer left Pebble Beach, and I was fortunate enough to get a shot at that position. And so we had just finished up the 2019 U.S. Open. I'm promoted. But also we've got COVID, closed golf course, a furloughed team, and we're also renovating our par 3 course. So I was kind of thrown into the fire right out of the gate. Really was just an opportunity for me to prove myself. And at the end, you learn a lot about yourself and the group, and we all came through it together. And definitely, I've worked a lot of tournaments and a lot of great clubs, but going through that adversity and coming out with, feeling accomplished was probably my proudest moment for sure, and the greatest challenge I faced.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. In your industry, in your role, I can't think of something more challenging than what you just described. I mean, you were really thrown into the deep end of the pool at that moment.
Yeah. The grass keeps growing, whether you like it or not. So you just got to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised that you persevered and were successful. When you're as at my age, I get to say you're a young guy.
Yeah, I'll take it.
So although you've got a tremendous amount of experience. I mean, you've obviously got a lot of game left. And when you think in terms of kind of your legacy and how you're going to want to be viewed at the end of your career, what would you like to kind of leave behind as your legacy? How would you like to be referred to by future generations in the game?
Sure. Superintendents we really take our jobs very seriously, and we're very passionate about what we do, and for good reason. But, I tell people that work for me that, nobody remembers who the superintendent was of Pebble Beach, or they don't remember who the president was 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So they're certainly not going to remember who a superintendent of a golf course was. But I think the biggest impact that I can have is leaving behind a track record of helping the next generation of superintendents reach their potential, foster an environment of making those around me better, When it comes to the environment, like Mr. Moore says, we all live downstream, and we're borrowing this land from future generations. So that's a pretty inspiring way to put it, and motivates you to approach every decision or scenario in your life and be well thought out. So with a focus on making everything around you better. So hopefully I can have a bit of an impact on the next generation of folks.
Yeah. It's interesting, Bubba. Having talked to a lot of executives and leaders in a lot of different industries, I mean, one of the common traits you find in really successful people is kind of their commitment to the next generation, their interest in helping advance people and develop talent. And it's clear that your commitment to that whole concept is solid, and it's going to serve you well. And I'm confident there'll be people referring to you 30 years from now the way you are referring to some of the guys that you worked with at Pebble Beach Company. So it's
I hope so. That was a big force to come out here, getting to work with some great people and hopefully impact some lives for sure.
That's great. Well, listen, it's great to get to know you, Bubba. Thank you so much for being on the Golf Sustainability podcast. And I absolutely look at visiting you there. If not this year, without question in 2025.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, and let me know when you'll be out. We'll take care of you and your son. Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Well, we'd love that. Thanks very much. And to our listeners, thanks very much for joining me today on another interesting episode of the Golf Sustainability Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a thumbs up rating on your favorite podcast player, and recommend the podcast to your friends, colleagues, and associates. We're committed to delivering conversations with interesting people like Bubba in every episode of the Golf Sustainability Podcast. And it's all done in the hope of accelerating best practices in golf sustainability, both on the environmental and on the social side. So thank you for listening, and have a great day.